I've always loved the art direction of Madoka Magica. The Witch's Labyrinths definitely steal the show, but I also just find the base character designs appealing, if maybe a little samey in terms of face and body shape. I like how they chose to render those thin, mechanical pencil-like lines in the characters' faces and eyes for a bit of added depth. The costumes aren't over-designed and have great silhouettes to contrast with each other, while their pared-down color palettes integrate with and complement each other. Additionally, the fight scene choreography is crisp and creative, and the effects animation carries a distinct look. The animation itself had lots of problems, most notably in the initial release, but to me it always felt like the design and storyboards served as really strong bones supporting the visuals from underneath. Given that, I wanted to take the opportunity to highlight a few aspects of the framing and cinematography that I personally don't see talked about that much, but really add to the overall themes and visuals of the series. This video assumes familiarity with Madoka Magica's character arcs and themes, but won't directly describe specific plot points, so there will be no major spoilers. Before diving into the use of backgrounds, it's worth mentioning that some of them change between the broadcast, Blu-ray, and movie versions of the series, and it is for that reason we have more than one render of the world's ugliest clock. In several cases, the new backgrounds can change the vibe of the scenes, but for the sake of simplicity, I'll try to focus on the Blu-ray release, which I believe is the standard for streaming and digital distribution. There's a lot of weird places in Madoka Magica, both in and outside of the Witch's Labyrinths, but part of the strangeness of the architecture can be chalked up to its near-future setting. This is perhaps best exemplified by her school, wherein each classroom is placed inside a fully transparent cube, a setup that looks simultaneously exposing and confining, and an all-around agoraphobic nightmare. The learning chambers come equipped with school desks which retract into the floor, thematically underscoring the children's absences with an additional void in space, and a big ol' smartboard. The stark white architecture that makes up the school, as well as a couple of other locations in Madoka, is one of many visual motifs that I suspect was inspired by Utena, the adolescence of Utena in particular. I suspect this is true in the case of Kill la Kill's Hinoji Academy as well. Next on the list of weird but still plausible near-future structures is Madoka's Modernist Mansion, which features such amenities as tomato garden that is ambiguous on whether it is located inside or outside the house, a really unglamorous-looking master bedroom, and fan-favorite, huge-ass bathroom. Getting even more surreal, we have Kyosuke's bachelor apartment-sized, perpetually toilet parlor of a hospital room, complete with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and lots of room for a young man with mobility issues to stretch out in. Sometimes there's chairs. It's even more bizarre when in context with the hallway outside, which has a more modern institutional hospital look. If I were designing a hospital, I'd probably want these massive windows to line the patient rooms so they could get lots of natural light, rather than having the hallway, which serves the vital purpose of efficiently connecting areas of the hospital and is an innately liminal space against the outside of the building, but it is for this reason I'm neither an architect nor a map painter. This is what Homura's house looks like from the outside. This supervillain mind palace is what it looks like on the inside. I like to think that at the top of every month she gets it gutted and renovated, and it's best to just not think about where her parents are during all this. These kinds of weird liminal spaces are peppered throughout the series. Interior spaces are consistently too big, and exteriors are shot extremely wide and often strangely bereft of other people. Some of this could be chalked up to a lack of attention to detail, but I believe the extra space helps emphasize the isolation and powerlessness experienced by the characters, especially as the series progresses and the disconnect between their reality and the day-to-day life surrounding them intensifies. So now that we have these weird vacant spaces established as the main stage for the action, we can break down and examine how the camera navigates them in more detail. Something I noticed that is fairly unique to Madoka Magica is just how much the camera jumps from cut to cut during dialogue-heavy scenes, often highlighting different parts of the environment with close-ups or extreme wide shots. This additional movement allows for even the exposition scenes to have a fair amount of visual interest to them. There also tends to be a large number of individual matte paintings when transitioning between locations. This mid-scene transition has 3. This transition to the mall has a whopping 5. Another set of 5 is given to establishing this gross industrial area. Successive background paintings typically aren't as expensive as the initial layout painting will be, but I'd wager this is still a pretty expensive way to shoot sequences. As the conversations in the series become more fraught, there's more shots where the speaker's face is either partially or fully obscured. Compare the scene of Madoka, Sayaka, and Hitomi having a snack in the first episode, which contains a lot more traditional shot-reverse shots, to Sayaka and Hitomi in the same restaurant in episode 7. There's more focus on the body language and vocal performance to relay the intensity and nuance of their feelings. Obscuring a character's expression is typically employed to have the audience empathize with them more by allowing them to project their own feelings, but it can also make them nervous about the information being withheld from them. Combined with the quick successions of cuts, it denies the audience a solid foothold in the conversation, mirroring the character's own feelings of disorientation and lack of control, as the enormity of their situation becomes more clear. In addition to Utena's weird vacant spaces, its regular use of shadows and silhouettes as well as planar views are also absorbed into Madoka's visual language. The way these wide planar shots are combined with the characters' exaggerated proportions makes them look more like dolls or puppets on a set, emphasizing the idea that they're being manipulated or otherwise lack control over what is happening to them and the people around them. There's a repeated motif of characters walking in darkness together like this. It projects a sterility and emotional distance, and an argument can be made it looks like they're not making any progress, just walking on the spot in some weird liminal space, further tying into the larger theme of futility. Before wrapping up, I wanted to briefly touch on how these ideas were expanded on in the follow-ups to the series. Rebellion is an absolute feast for the eyes. With the expanded theatrical budget and the liberties allowed by the setting, its visuals are even more spectacular, and the locations are even more off-the-wall bonkers. Every shot in this movie is impactful and interesting. Some of my favorites include Sayaka's monologue, Madoka braiding Homura's hair, and this wide planar shot of a bus falling from the sky and exploding. Even the one location that is most tied to the reality we know is this random barren wasteland, and I think that rules. On the other hand, what I saw of Magica Record had more the vibe of copying the aesthetics of something without really understanding why they worked in the first place. Essentially making things weird for the sake of being weird, and not because it tells us anything about the character's emotions or setting. There's still the odd cool looking stuff in there, I just don't know how much substance is behind it. I am writing and recording this video before the release of the fourth movie, but from the concept movie and trailers it seems to be following in the tradition of Rebellion and continuing to iterate on the motifs and themes discussed, while continuing to heighten the spectacle of the imagery. In the end, I hope this video helped highlight some of the details that I think makes Madoka a joy to watch over and over again, as well as illuminate some of the more invisible aspects of storytelling that lie behind the character designs and plot twists, but help to forge a unique identity for a work and allows it to continue to stand out years after its creation.